When you hear the word walnut, you probably picture a wrinkled brain-shaped nut sitting in a bowl or tossed into a salad. It feels familiar, ordinary, even boring. But walnuts are far more interesting than they appear. They're not just a snack, not just a baking ingredient, and not even technically a nut in the strictest botanical sense. So today, let's slow down and ask a simple question that turns out to be surprisingly complex. What exactly is a walnut? Behind that hard shell is a story involving ancient trees, confusing classifications, survival strategies, and one of nature's most clever designs. Let's get into it, right here, on History of Simple Things. Here's where things immediately get confusing. In everyday language, walnuts are absolutely nuts, but botanically speaking, they're something else. True nuts, like acorns and hazelnuts, are single-seeded fruits with a hard shell that don't split open when mature. Walnuts don't fit that definition. Instead, walnuts are classified as drupes, or more specifically, drupaceous fruits. That puts them in the same broad family as peaches, cherries, and plums. The key difference is layers. A walnut has 3 of them. The outer green husk is the first layer. Beneath that is the hard shell we crack open. And inside that shell is the seed, the part we eat. That structure is exactly how a drupe works. The only reason walnuts feel so different from a peach is because evolution turned the middle layer into armor. So the walnut you eat isn't the fruit, it's the seed hidden deep inside one. If you've only seen walnuts in stores, you've missed half the fruit. Fresh walnuts grow inside a thick green husk that looks more like a lime than a nut. This husk is soft at first, slightly spongy, and extremely bitter. As the walnut matures, the husk darkens, dries, and eventually splits open, revealing the shell inside. That husk isn't just packaging. It's loaded with tannins and bitter compounds designed to discourage animals from eating the walnut before it's ready. Interestingly, these same compounds were once used as natural dyes, producing deep browns and blacks that stain fabric and skin almost permanently. By the time walnuts reach grocery stores, the husk has already been removed, cleaned away, and forgotten. But in nature, it's a critical part of the walnut's survival strategy. Cracking a walnut isn't easy, and that's by design. The shell is one of the hardest natural seed casings found in edible plants. It's thick, deeply grooved, and incredibly tough relative to its size. Those grooves aren't random. They increase structural strength without adding weight, similar to how ridges reinforce cardboard or metal beams. This makes the shell resistant to crushing while still allowing the seed inside to develop fully. For the tree, the shell serves one purpose: protection. Walnuts can survive falls, pressure, moisture, and even partial decay while still keeping the seed viable. That's why walnuts can lie on the ground through winter and still sprout months later. When you struggle to crack one open, you're essentially fighting millions of years of evolutionary engineering. The resemblance is so strong that it almost feels intentional. Split a walnut in half, and you'll see 2 lobes, deep folds, and a wrinkled surface that closely mirrors the human brain. This similarity fascinated ancient cultures. Long before modern nutrition science, people believed in the doctrine of signatures, the idea that foods resembling body parts were good for those parts. Walnuts, looking like brains, were believed to improve memory and intelligence. Oddly enough, modern science later discovered that walnuts are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and compounds linked to brain health. The resemblance is still coincidental, but it's one of those moments where symbolism and science overlap just enough to feel eerie. Despite the name, English walnuts didn't originate in England. They likely came from Central Asia, particularly regions around modern-day Iran. From there, they spread west through trade routes and eventually became common in Europe. English traders popularized them, and the name stuck. Another major variety is the black walnut, native to North America. Black walnuts have thicker shells, stronger flavor, and a more earthy bitterness compared to English walnuts. They're harder to process but highly prized for their intensity. Most walnuts you find in stores today are English walnuts grown in places like California, where climate and soil allow for large-scale production. Fresh walnuts taste mild, slightly creamy, and faintly sweet. But as they age, their flavor shifts. Oils inside the walnut begin to oxidize, creating bitterness if stored too long or improperly. That's why walnuts can taste rich and buttery one moment and sharp and unpleasant the next. Heat intensifies this transformation, which is why toasting walnuts brings out deeper flavors, nutty, almost savory notes that weren't obvious before. The walnut's high fat content makes it incredibly flavorful, but also fragile. It's a food that rewards freshness and careful handling. More than half of a walnut's weight comes from fat, mostly unsaturated fats. This oil isn't just for flavor, it's energy storage for the seed. When a walnut sprouts, it relies on that oil reserve to fuel early growth before it can photosynthesize. This is why walnuts are calorie-dense and filling. A small handful carries significant energy, which made them valuable long before modern snacks existed. That same oil content is why walnuts spoil faster than many other nuts. It's also why they benefit from refrigeration, even though we rarely think of nuts as perishable. So the next time you crack open a walnut, you're not just eating something healthy, you're breaking into a miniature survival capsule that's been perfecting its design for millions of years. And that's what exactly a walnut really is. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.